My name is Robert Meek Hope. I was born in York County, South Carolina, November the 4th, 1929. I have been a permanent resident of Rock Hill, South Carolina, for most of my life, having spent time in college and in the Army and in one job away from Rock Hill. I attended Clemson College at that time. It's now a university, but it was strictly military when I entered in 1947. I graduated in January of 1952 with a degree in poultry husbandry, and I was an ROTC graduate, and I received my commission from Clemson and went right directly into the Army, reporting in March to Fort Benning, Georgia. And I was in service for almost 24 months. I attended the ROTC summer camp at Fort Benning, Georgia, and it was at that time in 1950 that the Korean War broke out, and it got serious at that point. We had 4th of July, and we went to Panama City, Florida, but it wasn't much of a visit because we had just gotten paid, and that little bit of money that we had made ROTC camp wasn't it didn't go too far. But anyway, I spent and then when I graduated, I went back to Fort Benning, Georgia, and went to Associate Company Officers course. It was a 16-week course, and I went down there after graduating from Clemson in January. I went to Fort Benning in March. And then I had the 16 weeks that I was there, I was going through infantry basic training, and we were assigned to different outfits when we graduated from Fort Benning in July. I was assigned to Fort Jackson, and knowing that most of the guys coming out of Fort Benning would be in a rifle company and going to the rifle range at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning and all, I was very fortunate, I thought, and that I was assigned to courts and boards, and I was a trial counsel for AWOLs, and I thought, my goodness, what a break I got. But I realized that wasn't a break when I got to the real front. Along about December, I was planning to get married, but I had not yet received any orders about where my next post would be, and I knew it would be more than likely Korea. But I thought, well, if I'm going to Korea, I think I ought to get married, and if anything happened to me, and I'd have the insurance of the Army and to take over and help my wife in her early stages of life. We were at Fort Benning, Georgia Fort Jackson, for about a month and a half, and I was AWOL half of the time I was there because the company commander was. I had been down there, and we got to be real good friends. So he gave me a special leave, and so I didn't have to work much that 1 month. And I even rented an apartment down there and didn't tell him I wasn't going to be there but a month. But that all worked out, and then that was in about January. I got married on January the 3rd. Had honeymoon for about a week or so. So end of January, I spent 30 days on leave here in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I reported to San Francisco and got on USS Black, and that ship was a 16-day voyage to parts unknown. We had a week between debarkation and the time we arrived in debarkation, so we took in everything. Old San Francisco baseball team was playing there then, and we had a good time. and we got on that ship, and my main assignment was guarding the hold, which was where the enlisted men all stayed, and I sat on the top step of the starting down because I couldn't stand the stint of the place, and it was terrible. But anyway, we got them over there in about 16 days. I remember we were traveling about 16 knots an hour. USS Black, it had come out of mothballs and they were using those ships again. I arrived in Yokohama, Japan, and I thought, oh my goodness, I have gotten to stay in Japan. But no, we got off of the ship, walked inside, and everybody's orders were posted on the bulletin board. So I turned around, went back, got right on the USS Black to take the trip around the corner and go into Incheon, where we docked out at sea. It's too shallow to dock big ships there. And I had 2 or 3 Swedish hospital ships sitting out there, and here these helicopters just hovering overhead, bringing 2 stretchers at a time back to the hospital ship. Well, I was the first one called out, and I was appointed train commander going north when we got into Incheon. I had a staff, and one thing about it, it was cold, and we got to stay in the caboose with the pot-belly stove. But I was in charge of the train, and they had warned us that we were responsible for broken windows and all, and the Korean children would throw rocks at the train. They loved that sport of throwing rocks, and if they hollered chop chop and they didn't get anything, it was they'd start shelling. I ended up with 7 broken windows, but and the other thing they had, we had to issue the guards live ammunition. That was a new experience for me. I had been in court martial work at Fort Jackson, and I hadn't been on live firing range or anything else. So having live ammunition was a real treat. Well, we got on that train. It's a narrow gauge railroad, and we crossed the Han River. That booger stopped. That stopped on the Han River, and I just knew we were going to have soldiers getting off of that train, jumping in that river, not wanting to avoid the war. But that didn't happen, and we went on up to, I guess it was Arrowhead. It was the 7th Division Depot headquarters, and we went on up there, and I stayed there several days and got into some interesting jobs. We arrived in Arrowhead about sometime between the 10th and the 15th of April, and our first person I met at Arrowhead was a good friend of mine who had graduated from Clemson, and he was an ROTC, and we were both poultry majors from Clemson, so we had a celebration of meeting there. A couple of days later, we had all this action. We had all this action up on the line. You could hear all the big guns and all going off, and we didn't know all it was happening. But that happened to be the 17th day of April, and we were hearing the Battle of Pork Chop Hill, the first battle of Pork Chop Hill, and then I was assigned temporarily to graves restoration, and I had to identify bodies, and dumb me, I didn't know what the little nip in the dog tags were for, but I found out right quick that you put it between the dead man's teeth, and that's the way they identify them. And of course, once they clamped down on it, it didn't turn loose. But that was about 5 days of that, and that's about all a fellow could stand of that. They'd bring another crew in after that. Then I went back for my assignment and found out where I was going. And I was going to the 17th Infantry Easy Company of the 7th Division. And that's who we had heard all that battle and all the big guns firing and all the casualties that were coming off of that hill. That was on April the 17th. I was assigned, my orders came down that I would be a platoon leader with the 17th Infantry, Easy Company. There were 3 shaved-tail lieutenants, not actually shaved-tail because they were all ROTC too, but they had been on the ship with me from San Francisco, and we were all assigned to the same company. Easy Company of the 17th had lost all of their officers in the first battle of Pork Chop Hill, and they had lost most of their men. So we had a week or two getting reorganized and getting up to full strength and everything before we got further assignment. After we arrived at company headquarters, we had a lot of reorganization. It was a mixture of some few veterans, most of them new people, and we were the only officers, the 3 second lieutenants. Lieutenant Gorman Smith was my first company commander, and he had been wounded, and he came off the line at that time. Later to come back and join us. I had the duty of training soldiers in, I call it combat readiness to go attack a hill. And we worked about a week and a half of different exercises, maneuver type things, and we had pretty good success. My main thoughts at that time was, here we were using live ammunition, and I just wasn't used to live ammunition. We had been on the rifle ranges and things like that, but firing in open fields and all like that was a new experience for me. We got through with it though, and we were assigned to a platoon, and I was a platoon leader of Easy Company of the 17th Infantry. When we were, after our week or so of reassembling and training, I went up on Hill 347. 347 was the dominant hill in the area. It overlooked Old Baldy and Pork Chop and Hill 200 and 327. But it was the highest hill, 347 meters. It gave a view of anything we wanted, and it had observation posts and everything, fairly safe, fairly secure back there. But we had one instance that we had to bring all of the cooks and everybody back in the rear up to help reinforce 347 at a later date when we had a little skirmish up there. But our main site was 347, and that was to stop anything that would come through after they got through the outposts and whatnot. After spending about 2 weeks on 347 and really getting acclimated to what war was all about, sea rations and all, we were pulled off, went to the rear to reorganize and assigned to Hill 200, which was immediately in front of 347. It was you didn't travel to 200 by convoy or anything. You marched because you were in a line of fire of Old Baldy and whatnot from the Chink side. But on Hill 200, I was in the middle of the hill, and we had trenches going everywhere, well fortified, and my hoochie, my command post, platoon command post, was where they they played all their propaganda, and they would come up each night. Our friendly soldiers would come up every night and talk about how nice it is on our side and how we would like to have you join us over here. And about that time, they had us zeroed in, just like an automatic weapon was zeroed in on my hoochie, and they'd stop bombarding that thing, and had a strong hoochie, had 4x8s and 8x8s, and Barack on top of that, but silt would still come through when those rounds hit and all. But I can remember sleeping on wire mattresses made out of communication wire, and we had to those sleeping bags were a lifesaver. They helped us sleep, but we used engineering stakes to make those beds and make those cots, and so we stayed up there about maybe about 2 weeks on Hill 200. On Hill 200, it was a little different. We had our outposts and all, and they were listening posts, and they had to go out each night, and of course that to forewarn us of anybody coming by. And it was a funny thing. If the Chinese were in the area, you could smell them. We had to run our patrols, and I ran my first patrol from Hill 200. Now, they had an emplacement. The Chinese had an emplacement that would run out from the hill, and you could hear it when it started, and it made a noise, and they'd fire a couple rounds and come back in, and it was it was out of a tunnel, and that's what we had to go on this patrol for. That was, up to that point, that was the scariest I had been of anything that had happened during the war. But we had a 12-man patrol, and we were well organized, and we practiced a day or two what we were to do. And in case we got in trouble, we knew what we were going to do, and we had to simulate action. So we were actually practicing on Hill 200. One other thing that happened on Hill 200 was unique, is that we had the line crossers, the Katusas. We didn't know South Korean from a North Korean, and these people was choking ammunition for us and all, might be choking ammunition for the Chinese the next night, and they might come back the next day. But that was experience on 200, and we came off of 200 to go up on Pork Chop Hill, and it was at Pork Chop Hill sometime in May the 8th to the 18th, that we had a pretty big skirmish up there, and I was platoon leader of my platoon was on the right flank, and we had our listening post out, and they did a good job, and they let us know that the enemy was in large numbers were planning an attack on Pork Chop Hill. So it was at that time that we could see the enemy coming, and we had a command that we could call flash fires. So I called for flash fire pork chop. Pork chop was surrounded with all the artillery that we had in force, so that they would get anybody that was attacked. And I mean, you could see a round come in and you'd see a hole where the soldiers. It was a number, they outnumbered us greatly, but flash fires was really what helped us up there. Interesting enough, from Pork Chop Hill was a rear of Old Baldy. Old Baldy was commanded by the Chinks, and they had a great big opening at the rear of Pork Chop. I mean, at the rear of Old Baldy, and that's where all the people assembled. But they had people coming in, and they would dig trenches at night, and they'd have new apertures open up all over Baldy, and be firing at you the next day. And that was an adventure, and I did not ever call in. The Air Force would come in with napalm, and they would drop barrel after barrel after barrel in that opening on Old Baldy, and I know it was some scorched people inside after those things hit. And while we were on Pork Chop Hill and calling in the flash fires, and that's where all the artillery in the Corps would fire, and it would be all prearranged fire, and we could see just hordes and hordes of the Chinese. And the one thing that amazed me is the size of them. And I later found out they were Mongolian, and they were a lot larger in stature than the Chinks, but they were the ones doing the fighting over there at that time. And it was about a 2.5, 3 day battle, but we prevailed, and we thwarted their attack, and that's when we knew that we had our offense was back in style, that we could stop them, and they couldn't get to 347. During that period of time on Pork Chop Hill, we must have lost 8 or 10 people. I know that during flash fires, our short rounds got a portion of our 4th platoon, which is the weapons platoon, because they were behind 200. They couldn't make it up the hill, but they were in a stationary position behind 200, and I know that we about wiped out our 4th platoon. But we had a number of casualties, but we stopped the threat. During the flash fires and whatnot on Pork Chop, during that action, you could see the number of dead soldiers, enemy soldiers, and I don't have the figure, but it was a great number, and you could see they would recover some of their wounded and whatnot. We had very few casualties on our side compared to what we did. I had the figures at one time, but they slipped my mind. After this skirmish, we had been hit pretty good, and we were withdrawn and sent to the rear to reestablish our combat readiness. And at that time, we stayed back, I guess, maybe to the 1st of June, and we had 15 days, I think, back there, and we were just building up. And this was having to be about the middle of June, and we wanting to get this thing over. And about that time, it was all the news all the radios, all the stateside papers. Truce is near, truce is near. And I just thought to myself, how good it would be. And a buddy of mine was in service company, and he had invited me back to play baseball with the battalion team, but we still had a little bit more action on the line, so I didn't get to go. And the rule was that couldn't but one officer play on the team. We had a good 2 weeks rest, and the training that we got, the build up of new people after that skirmish in May, we were combat ready again, and we were assigned the next time to 327, Hill 327, and it was to the right of Hill 200. And I remember I was executive officer, and I was responsible for all the stationary equipment up there. And goodness knows, I don't know how many dollars worth of equipment that I was responsible for, machine guns and all that were left there. But it was I also had a PX up there, and it didn't bother us that that they might be attacked and we lose it all, but we were looking to the future of getting home. And all this time they were talking about the truth, and every man on the front line was looking at his points. 4 points got you, 4 points a month would get you home. And so we wanted to build up our points. That's and then all of a sudden one night, without any forewarning or notice or anything else, we were pulled off a 327, and I never did sign over any equipment to the replacements. But we were called back to get ready for supposedly action of 6-8 July, sometime in there, and we went back and got ready to counterattack Pork Chop. This would have been the third time that the Chinks had tried to get Pork Chop, and George Company and Easy Company were assigned to go up abreast. We'd walk behind 200 and attack from right to left flank and just go up the hill. The Chinese had captured the hill at the time we got there. We got there about 3 o'clock on the 8th, and the Chinese were already in the ditches, in the trenches, and everything. And they had the upper hand. They had the high parts of the hill. So they were rolling those potato smashers down the hill 10 at a time. They had some artillery fire coming in, but it was those potato smashers that were hitting us with shrapnel when we were attacking that hill. We got up halfway and our men started falling out. You take a platoon of 185 people, and we lost a good percent of those going up that hill. When we got to the top, when we got to the trenches, we found that what we had planned on being our protection was a detriment. They were closed. We couldn't get in the trenches. So that left us shooting ducks for anybody that was in the trenches. We finally found a breakthrough and got in the trenches, and they were loaded down with wounded and whatnot that we had been trying to carry in. One place, in the same trench, you could hear the Chinese on one side. There's a big barrier between us and the Chinese. And you could hear them talking. And here we were trying to get our soldiers back to the aid station. When we were counterattacking Pork Chop Hill on July the 8th, we walked single file behind Hill 200 and then spread out and attacked Pork Chop. Our destination was getting to the high part, the high post, so that we could gain control of Pork Chop again. We didn't realize at the time that both George Company and the Easy Company were getting casualties they just falling out everywhere. I know Easy Company lost 3 officers, and I was wounded, but I stayed with them, and I got into trenches, and it was a mess. And I promised the good Lord, I said, Lord, you get me out of this mess, and I'll be yours forever. I did not realize that I was wounded until I saw a little trickle of blood in my hand, and I didn't go to the aid station. I helped get the wounded in the trenches, and it was awful, the number of casualties that we had, and we were actually walking on dead soldiers in the trenches just to get the ones that were wounded back to the aid station. It was that night I got back to the aid station, and I went to sleep. Now, believe it or not, you get so exhausted that you can go to sleep in action in a battle such as that. But I was at the aid station. I had gone to sleep on one of these stake beds with Kumwha wire run between them. And I woke up, and here was a Chinese standing over me. And first thing I thought I'd been captured, but it wasn't. He had been captured. He was wounded, and he had been captured. We then reassembled, and the next morning we were trying to get our bearing and where we were and what we were doing and who had what position and whatnot. And the colonel had asked that I send out a search party out of one of a machine gun emplacement and to see just where we were and what we needed to do. And both of them were immediately knocked off. So I directly disobeyed orders, I guess. I could have been court-martialed for it, for not doing what he said. But after I lost 2 men, I said, it's not worth it. We know we're outnumbered. We got to hold our ground. All right. During the night, we spent our time trying to figure out what to do next. And as I said, I went to the aid station to see what was happening there. And the colonel wanted to send me off the hill with my wounded hand, but I said no, I wanted to stay. And so I went back. on I don't remember exactly, but it was somewhere around the aid station that I got hit a second time and then a third time. One time in the leg and one time in the buttocks. And so the colonel wanted me airlifted off, and so I got on Army personnel carrier, APC, and they carried me down to where the competent pad was, and I got on one of those things, and sure enough about died getting back to the MASH hospital, tied underneath one of those things with it propping up overhead. I landed back there, and I found out I had superficial wounds of the hands and thigh and the buttocks. I took time to write my mother because I knew that the Army would notify her that I had been wounded in action. And before I went to the aid station, before I went to MASH, I wanted to be sure that that letter was mailed. And I told her, that I was all right, and that I was being taken care of. I'll probably be back online in 10 or 12 days. That was July the 10th. When I was back at the aid station, everything was in chaos. Nobody knew who anybody was and everything, and of course it was as many chinks on the hill or more than there were U.S. soldiers. So we had to make a decision, and the decision had to come from high, but they had asked us what we thought about staying the scene and seeing what we can have. I did not see us in any way, shape, or form staying on that hill and losing the remainder of our personnel just to say that we won the battle. So we came off of the hill, and we left a lot of equipment. We left a lot of soldiers and whatnot, and we finally got most of our soldiers off. But truce. They talking now. Panman and John, they ready to exchange prisoners. The Chinese would be coming from on train by Panman and John, and our people would be dropped off at Panman and John. And I was during the time that after I was off of light duty, I was able to go up and see that. And all this happened between the 10th and the time I was in the hospital till about the 20th or 21st, and the armistice was signed on the 27th of July. Of course, we had been hearing about the truce since I had arrived in April. And of course, rumors started in the service about more than any place I've ever known. And get something started and they just keep building up, and it really got big, and everybody was mad at Sigmund Rhee and all that, the powers to be, that wasn't anything happening. And hey, nobody wanted to be the last person up there. Nobody wanted to be the last person killed in that skirmish or war or what they want to call it. But that's what it felt like, and I guess we were lucky to get off of that hill without losing everybody we had. I'm glad they pulled off. I didn't. I can cut off my nose and spite my face to lose something if I'm saving somebody's life. During the action on Pork Chop Hill primarily, I was awarded the Silver Star for gallantry in action. I had taken over for the company commander as we went up. There were a lot of heroes on Pork Chop Hill, and there were a lot of awards to be written up and whatnot. And being one of the officers that were able to stay with them, I had a hard time judging and deciding who should get awards and who shouldn't. And I know that it's like choosing an all-star football team. Somebody's going to be left off, and that was a hard thing to do. But I was awarded the Silver Star and a Purple Heart with oak leaf cluster. That means I was wounded more than one time. I value my Silver Star, being third highest ranking gallantry in action medal that you can win, and especially still living. We had a ceremony in January of '54 when I was presented with Silver Star by the General Trudeau. when it came to these awards and all, we knew the officers and we knew the enlisted men and whatnot, but we might have left out some people that really deserved to be rewarded with a Silver Star, Bronze Star, or whatnot. But it's hard to know everybody, and we were on the move most of the time, and we just didn't get to know people that well. I got to know my soldiers more in the rear than I did when we were on line. I just know one thing: you keep all of them on your side, because the second lieutenant is very vulnerable in the Army. He has to command his troops and get things done and keep morale and build morale and make a soldier feel good about himself. And let me tell you, the main medal that I like about the Army is the combat and combat infantry badge. That means it takes 30 days in action in combat zone to win a combat infantry badge. And that's a medal that everyone who wins it deserves it.